Metallurgists, Marty here from Heavy Metallurgy with a review of Mispyrming's latest album, Mid Hamri, released on December 16th, 2022 by Norma, Evangelium, Diaboli. Með Hamri is this Reykjavik, Iceland band's third full-length album since their 2015 inception. Even though such a late in the year release may strike them from achieving, all the year-end praise and year-end lists and all that sort of marketing boost an album can get to push them into the next year, Mispyrming have divulged a very potent and aggressive album that leans fearlessly into the black metal fire. Even though I recall seeing a lot of praise surrounding this band's last album, I never took the time to check them out, which is, you guys all kind of know how I am about the hype. But having done so and not knowing at all what to expect when I hit play on this album, I was, the element of surprise was there. It kicked in and impacted my initial impression of this album. You got to admit, with this day and age with the internet and the constant flow and bombardment of information and music that we all take in, being able to be surprised about a release is a rare occurrence, and it kind of heightens the listening experience, which is very cool. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of Með Hamri before I dive into track by track analysis. The vocalist DG, he executes a very throaty and harsh sounding shouting style, which can follow the key of the music when the song calls for it, which is kind of a nice touch. It gives it more of a musical emphasis when that happens. But otherwise his vocals are very sharp and stately. He's got a very poignant way of presenting the lyrics, and it's a very sharp delivery. And it never really wears on me. There's just so much power in it. It kind of puts me in mind of the way the vocals in bands like Deathspell Omega, or even more specifically Vikatnik from Dodheimsgard and Dold Vorde and Zanaven. How it comes in, the vocals, how their vocals interact with the music. His performance ends up being very powerful, dark, and penetrating. Regarding the music, Mispyrming excel at a very dynamic and melodically charged dissonance on this album, ranging from evil thrash riffs, more open chord moments where they can layer in a very subtle synth line on occasion to really focus on that melody. And of course, blazing speed, where the melody erodes and the riffs get more twisted. It kind of gives it more of a dire hit of dissonance when the melody cascades away. It's very cool. It's a very cool songwriting thing they've got going on with that. But regardless, the varying techniques at work here, the end result is decidedly black metal at its creative core, driven further by a hint of modern Norwegian black metal in the tone, overall style, and vibe, which, mentioning Vikatnik, the bands that he's involved in, it kind of makes sense that there's kind of, I don't know if it's a subconscious influence that creeps into their music, but I noticed it. It's definitely there. The band further pushes the envelope with these ambient, teetering on the verge of noise pieces that are layered in between each track. It provides a very cinematic feel and sense of cohesion. It ties the album together as a whole, and it kind of gives it a nice conceptual bow. It puts a conceptual bow on it. So as you're listening to the album, there's never really a let up of music or sound. And it kind of it ushers you through this well-considered album for sure. The album begins with two tracks bearing the same name, both of them named after the album, Með Hamri. The lead-off Með Hamri track blasts in with razor-sharp thrash riffs. And blast beats that spin into very manic sounding black metal riffs. So right away, they attack you with the blast and start to twist your emotions a little bit by throwing in these discordant type of black metal riffs. There's a little bit of chaos in there as well. The song is very bombastic and fierce. It flows through multiple dynamics and intensities before returning to that intro thrash riff, making that kind of the focal point of the song and the hook, essentially the hook. It's very expertly structured, and I found the rest of the album to thankfully follow suit. The second Með Hamri track flows in after a brief atmospheric piece. It's more of a mid-paced and emotional song with its piercing melody lines. that are played higher up on the fretboard, higher register notes. So it's kind of a disorienting, very clever riff, very disorienting, yet somehow maintaining a sense of melody. It makes it a very atypical sounding song, which it's quite powerful because of this, due to the hook-laden nature of the riff and the motion within it. It provides a tense feeling of urgency and shows that this band isn't all blast beats and minor chords. They've got a lot more going on in their tool shed, their songwriting tool shed, if you will. The track Engen Miskunn has proven to be my favorite on the album. The track quickly builds with excellent riffs and a rising sense of melody in the guitar work. And at the crescendo of the song, this melody and blast beats, it's very triumphant, and it's made even more so by the super simple synth line that they put over the riff, the progression in the riff. The way it all comes together, and the fact that synth line is super minimal, it really piles on the importance of it in the song. That's another thing, that slight nod to symphonic black metal. It kind of puts me in mind of the second wave of the Norwegian scene. So, but I guess I wanted to hear more of this sense of triumphant song building, but they kind of took other paths throughout the album, which in a way is a good thing, because if it was all built the same way with all the symphonic, atmospheric emotion, I think it would have been less impactful. And as it is, throwing it in there, it makes that song a definite high point for me on the album. The remainder of the album, it crushes along with consistency in the song and the riff writing, propelled by impressive drum work. There's a lot of interesting drum fills and steps outside the beat on occasion when the song calls for it. I think the drummer's name is MS, I believe so. But anyway, Mispyrming's well-considered and plotted out songwriting really relies on rock-solid dynamics. It sits within the music and powers it with a lot of skill and grace. These guys are great songwriters. But where did the band go wrong? And this is a super minor complaint on my part, being very nitpicky here, but the way the album itself is structured, you've got song, ambient piece, song, ambient piece. I really like the way that the ambient pieces fill in between the tracks, and it feels almost cinematic, as I stated earlier in the review. It feels like you're going along in a movie. Very good composition, very good flow and feel. You get to the last two tracks on the album, the first of which being Blodhefend. The ending, the last half of that song trails off into a longer than usual ambient piece. It feels like it drags on unnecessarily with very little sonic payoff. It's just an ambient piece that feels kind of thrown together, I guess. And then when the very last song on the album, Aftaka, comes in, it begins with an ambient piece as well. The two bleed together. Again, it's a slow moving ambient piece. Doesn't feel like it's kind of going anywhere. You're kind of stuck in a pool treading water. So when the metal segment of that song kicks in, I would have, threw in a blast beat, brought it in, woke people out of the trance. They didn't. It was a slow build. The song's a slow build before it does finally achieve hitting those blast beats and ending the album on a very urgent, tense moment. So the experimentation here, they got it right leading up to these last two tracks, and it drug on a little bit too long, but the payoff at the end, that intensity and that tense feeling is kind of how you want to leave an album. Leave an album with a loud, boisterous, punch to the face. And they did it. I mean, having said all that, I got to say, Mispyrming and this album really impressed me, enough so that I'm going to take the time to track down some of their older albums. And when I actually see a physical copy of this record, I am probably going to buy it. I've listened to it quite a bit. I really got accustomed to the songs and the power in it. So yes, if modern black metal is what you're into, especially if it's expertly composed and produced, the production on this album is very good as well. I never really got into that, but it's obviously a studio project that turned out very well. You got to give Mispyrming a chance. I mean, Med Hamri, it's a total ripper from start to finish. But before I let you go, I wanted to give a heads up to another album within the similar genre that I've been checking out this week. Finland's And Oceans will be dropping their 6th full-length album, As in Gardens, So in Tombs, on January 27th through Season of Mist Records. I've totally fallen out of touch with this band over the years, and it's mostly due that they were hitting in a time. The early stuff was sharp, symphonic leaning Finnish black metal. As they progressed, they started to take on more of a strange industrial slant, which if you watch this channel, you know that I like industrial music, but And Oceans just have a very odd way of incorporating it into their music, and it borderlined on silly more so than truly authentic feeling to me, or dark or sinister or atmospheric. It was just silly. This album has come in and they've been productive over the years, but it seems like with this album they're kind of turning back the clocks on their creativity. They're back in embracing more of a traditional style of Finnish black metal, symphonic produced Finnish black metal, and there are still elements of industrial in here, but they don't get so crazy with it. They don't get so crazy with it that it's repelling. It actually kept me interested, and they had just enough of a unique idea with it to embellish their music perfectly, but not trample on the older school vibe that they had going on. But I mean, who knows? I mean, I know there's a couple writers in our arsenal coming up here that may want to cover this, so I'm not going to go on too much about it. But yeah, check out the new And Oceans coming up here soon on Season of Mist Records. And that's it. Thanks for checking this out. I want to hear what you guys think of Mispyrming, and in the comments below, if you've heard this album yet, what do you think? Was I off the mark? Was I right on? Interested to know your thoughts. Be sure to like and subscribe, and fill your downtime with the countless hours of archive material we have here on the Heavy Metallurgy channel. More to come. See you next time. Thank you so much.